Wanna get down to explode. Count it off hot, 'cause three's gonna blow. Welcome back to Chaos Theory. I'm Aurian Archive, and, well, I've got a little bit of maintenance to do on my Invuln Super Strength. So while I'm running around getting the various exploration badges in City of Heroes, I kind of, I guess, wanted to meander a bit about how did Santa Incorporated, the apparently worst rated show, television show, or television format show of all time on HBO Max, currently broadcasting on HBO Max, if it's still broadcasting on HBO Max, how did it get made? And somebody spent a lot of money to make what is sold as a stop animation style of cartoon, featuring Seth Rogen and Sarah Silverman. Uh, from what I have seen of the animation, I'm not so sure it's a stop motion animation. I'm pretty sure it's just a standard CG animation. That means computer generated. And it was probably made inside a blender. Probably done by a how can I put this gently? A substandard animation firm, maybe not located inside of China, maybe inside of Taiwan, maybe a South Korean animation company. I don't think it's an actual. I don't think it's an actual Ralph Blinsky. Uh, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. It's great. And the point when I would probably want to sing it, I can't actually sing without going looking up. He's Mr. Iceman. He's Mr. Freeze. You know that guy. Those actual clay-made individual photograph taken for each uh, stop-motion animation needed. I don't think the Santa Incorporated is actually that kind of production. I'm pretty sure it's a CG production. I'm pretty sure it was done for a very low amount of money. And I'm pretty sure that the majority of the budget was paying various people to just read the script. And I'm not even sure that the people credited with writing the script are the actual writers. Alright. Now, if we step back for a second and think, okay, this isn't actually stop motion animated, this is just CG and stop motion style. This was probably done on the cheap using props that were very limited in their construction, not very much complexity to the rigging or the animation, which again fits in with a cheap CG uh, contract hit job. Alright, why did it get made in the first place? Not just, the technical details of how did the production company actually make it, what were they being paid to make it, but the script is terrible, the jokes are, well, I would be lying if I said that there was something resembling a joke. And to be completely unfair about Santa Incorporated, I've seen funnier jokes from drunk people that I've hauled to hospitals. Yeah, it's really bad. If you haven't watched it, you haven't missed anything. And the key difference here is messaging. And it's an ongoing backlash of expectations. A good case in point would be the Trump people within the Donald Trump orbit finally joined the Rumble platform. But they only joined the Rumble platform after some interesting usage scenarios were outlined and described in which any anti-Israeli, anti-Zionism, or even simply Israeli critical or Zion critical views or expressions are now considered bannable speech on the Rumble platform, which is, to say disconcerting, an understatement. It's one thing, to spout off and rail against something because you legitimately hate it for no reason other than specific interfactor here that has nothing to do with previous actions. It's quite another thing to say you can't be critical of Israel, you can't be critical of how the country is run, you can't be critical of the political decisions made, and you can't be critical of uh, the Jewish state in respect to the refusal to recognize that the Messiah has already been on the planet and will probably be back again, just not on their time frame. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that Rumble, under their Trump orbit uh, agreements, have kind of, agreed to censor and get rid of, which is not going to go well for Rumble, as just going to turn Rumble into another YouTube, a platform that people are looking to get away from. And I realize I'm saying this as I'm streaming live to YouTube. As a service, I really don't like what YouTube does. And there's a key point here, and it's a big difference between Donald J. Trump, or President Donald J. Trump, those in the Trump orbit, as in those who are surrounding him, the Jared Kushner types, and the expectations of the average person. I'm not convinced that Trump's social media, or the Trump social media platform, the Truth multimedia platform, is going to do much of anything. Mostly because, as I understand it, Trump himself is not really involved. It appears to be those in the Trump orbit using the Trump name in order to attract people to the service. Well, there's a reason a lot of services don't ever really go anywhere, and that's because most people in the service market expect a return on investment. There is an expectation that if you offer a product or offer a service, you will at some point make back the money that you invested into that service. It may not make you rich, but it will make you at least able to pay your bills, pay the power bill, pay your taxes, put food on the table, to at least live your life. And that's one of the reasons why Gab is doing so well right now, is because Gab is just trying to put food on the table. Gab's not worried about making it rich, getting billions in the bank, or starting with billions in the bank. Gab so far has just been, let's just make the best living that we can, offering a profitable service and package. And that seems to be working. And there are people who are flocking to Gab specifically because of the less focus on adhering to a cohesive political message. Gab is not censoring anyone who is critical of Israel, or critical of Israel's government, or critical of Zionism, or critical of the Jewish state in respect to the Messiah that has already risen. So, keeping that in mind, is an important distinction between how Gab operates and how other. Um, it's a difference in ideology in more ways than just one, and the dramatic case in point, if you will, is the one I've used before. Socialism is defined as when those who control the means of production are not responsible for the means of production. Capitalism is when those who control the means of production are responsible for the means of production. So with Gab, Gab controls the means of the production of their wealth. Gab host a service. Gab lets people say what they want. If somebody crosses the line and outright issues threats or encourages violence, Gab steps in and shuts that down because that kind of speech is not protected as free speech. But Gab takes responsibility for the content that is posted to Gab services. By applying a censorship technique, the Rumble now is controlling the means of production, how you can produce content, the production of their wealth, but they're not taking responsibility for what people post on there. If you post something that uh, Rumble doesn't politically agree with, or someone who is very pro-Zionistic says can't be posted, then it's being taken down, and that basically is Rumble stepping back and saying, you know what, we're not responsible here. We're going to let somebody else dictate what happens on our service, even though we control it. That's not a good thing. And this brings back around, keeping in mind those two fundamentally different ideologies. Who controls the means of the production of wealth? Who's responsible for the means of production of wealth? Is it the person who controls the means, or is it an external party? And then we begin to understand why Santa Incorporated was made. Santa Incorporated was not made by somebody who was responsible for the content. Whoever animated the show, whoever voiced the show, whoever put the script together, they are not responsible for the product. They have been paid, they have made their wealth, but they are not responsible for the wealth that has been generated. Somebody else is to blame. Who that somebody else is has lots of different people pointing fingers. Some are pointing at HBO Max, some are pointing at Seth Rogen, some are pointing at Sarah Silverman. It's an open question, who's responsible for what? And that's kind of how the socialist ideology works. You disguise who is responsible for a specific event or action. And this brings us back around to how most other television productions normally work. Whoever the production company is, whatever show that they are producing, in order to make money, they are responsible for the content of that show. They don't get paid if their show does not make any money. If advertisers don't buy a spot, or a subscription service that charges end users directly does not pick up the production, then the costs are not covered, and whoever is responsible for the production loses money. It's a pretty simple economic prospect, or not just economic prospect, but economic description. Whoever is responsible for the means of production is also the production manager. And the reason why... Did I miss a badge? I don't think I did. Okay, I missed a badge. Need a badge. Sure. Alright, so basically, Santa Incorporated is... I'm missing the one over there. What's... Atlas Park? I thought I went and grabbed it. Wasn't I just in Kings Row? Let's go back and re-grab it. Anyways, the ideological difference there of socialist... What I'm getting around to is socialists who have a political agenda, a political reason to make something, don't care about the return on investment. They don't. You can look at George Soros, you can look at Adolf Hitler, you can look at Joseph Stalin, you can look at Che Guevara, you can look at Hugo Chavez, you can look at every single socialist dictator who has ever existed, who has ever tortured people, killed people to push a political agenda. They don't care about making a return on investment. They don't care if they make a financial return. What they care about is, did their message get out? The message is the product. The reception of the message is the return. And that's how Santa Incorporated got made. Wasn't ever about It wasn't ever about making a Christmas television show. It wasn't ever about making a show about an elf who has to uh, take over Santa's position because Santa's retiring. And the idea of an elf stepping up and taking on Santa's shoes is something that's been, well, done before. It's not exactly what you would call an entirely new. Okay, I got this badge. What am I missing? I do have this badge, right? Did it get moved? It's supposed to be right here, but oh, yes, it did get moved. I'm not using an updated map. I've got to go back to the center. So now the long, hard slog back through the middle. And I need to get around to the other side of the map. Oh, well. Okay. Anyways. Compared to Christmas shows in the past, I mean, Tim Allen's The Santa Claus is... Tim Allen doesn't get paid unless the movie makes money. He doesn't get returns unless the Tim Allen Santa Claus movies make some money either in the box office or from the Disney Channel that picks those shows up. And that's a big takeaway that a lot of sane, rational, sensible people don't understand about modern Hollywood and modern television production. Everyone keeps looking. Another good case in point would be League of Legends. They have an animated show out, and for League of Legends, the show itself has to be good because the show is the product. The show is not carrying a message; it's telling stories set in the League of Legends universe. But the only way the show makes money is if people are watching it on the platform that it's been released on, and the production crew gets a kickback from the subscriber count of people who have chosen to watch that content. So there is a very big financial incentive to make a show that people want to watch. And League of Legends, from every determinable aspect, seems to have done just that. They have made a very good show. Oops, man. I don't think I've been poisoned, but possibility. League of Legends made a very good show that people want to watch. But you look at Santa Incorporated, it's not a show that people want to watch. It's not a show that has any thought given to the writing. It's a show that's all about pushing a specific political message, and I think the best way to define that political message would be toxic femininity. Something we've also seen with the Kevin Smith version of He-Man and the toxic Woof. If you've seen the pictures of the evil sorceress who's gained the sword of power, you going like, that's not cute, that's not adorable, that's not feminine, that's toxic femininity. Uh, it's about, those shows are about the message is the product is not the product. And it's an important distinction to make that makes absolutely zero sense to sane, rational people who, well, expect there to be some kind of return on investment. You don't just go and make a several hour long production of any kind unless you intend to get something out of it. How are you going to pay the artist? How are you going to pay the voice actors? Well, those kind of questions just don't matter to the socialist type because they're not responsible. The opportunity to make money is not always a legal question. And, and I hope I'm not spoiling anything by what I'm facing off here in the middle of the abandoned sewers. And we'll just take these guys. Whoa. I am out of endurance. Am I running? Okay, I've got ageless radio. That should help with some of these debuffs going on. Alright, I need a bit more damage. Strength Rage. Not enough. Got hit by Cortex. Alright. The return on investment question is one that almost cannot be ignored or bypassed or not considered. Is there a way to stop the propaganda, the socialist propaganda, the repeated production of content that is not supposed to be profitable? Well, bad news is not really. And the reason why can be traced back to the National Socialist German regime, the Thousand Year Reich. That the Thousand Year Reich was not concerned about making its money legally. The Thousand Year Reich, the National Socialists under Adolf Hitler, were not above, or quite certainly below, stealing, embezzling, and committing extortion, defrauding people, or other various unsavory methods of acquiring wealth. Methods that in most cases would be declared as unethical or immoral. Hogan's Heroes had a particularly good bow shot uh, on this subject when the Germans have obtained a large amount of gold, and the National Socialist Party members, like, we've confiscated it. We confiscated this gold. And Sergeant Schultz just dryly says, I thought if you take something that does not belong to you, it is stealing. And that's kind of the point, is that socialists don't. The idea of personal property is not something that registers to a socialist. And we come back to the ideology. Socialist is someone who controls the means of production of wealth, but aren't responsible for it. So if you apply that to finances, even though the socialist claims credit for having for wealth generation, but they were not responsible for the wealth generation. They're not responsible for the effects of the wealth generation. They're not responsible for anything. They just Say, okay, we earned it, but we didn't do anything. With that kind of ideology in mind, it's no wonder why a vast majority of the white-collar criminals, the fraud embezzlement types, almost always universally vote Democrat. There's no wonder that the most corrupt political parties who seek donations or say they're going to do one thing with the money that's been raised and then proceed to do something completely different are registered Democrats. Need I say more than Tammany Hall? Is not a problem with the ideas of the political party or the rank and file, because there's a lot of people who probably vote Democrats who are not socialists. They do believe in the Democrat Party tenets that every person should have a vote, that big government, that by everyone having a vote, everyone is the government, and thus the government is big, and thus the government can answer and address any particular problem. Because the government is represented by all voters and everyone has a vote, then government is the answer. Well, government is never the answer. Government is a necessary evil, an agreed upon centralization point, where tasks that are not easily suited to a local viewpoint can be delegated from the local viewpoint. And if you don't understand that, you probably failed Government 101. The kind of point here is that the leaders of the Democrat Party, because the underlying ideology, what underpins the party itself, is an ideology that encourages theft, that encourages extortion, that encourages various crimes, because it essentially is an ideology that is against being responsible. Well, if you're not responsible, then what law have you broken? Simple enough question, is it not? And we can just loop this ideology back around. How does Santa Incorporated get made? It gets made because somebody wants to push the toxic femininity message. They want to push a message that there is a glass ceiling, that girls cannot get ahead, that the white man is evil, that white man is responsible for all the problems. And they want to paint a picture that all white men are chauvinist pigs who don't give a flying sexual intercourse about anything. A disgusting and reprehensible point of view, if I ever heard of one. And is I'm trying to come up with an idea to describe how insulting the modern Democrat view of humanity is. View of the view of those pushing critical race theory. It's a bit like logging into City of Heroes and declaring that all girls must play defenders and all males must play tanks. Yeah, as soon as you finish banging your head against a brick wall, that's pretty much how insulting the Democrat ideology, the socialist ideology, are to people who step back and think about it. It's not that there's not smart people on both sides of the question. There's not. It's people who look at the different underlying ideologies and then, well, which one gives me the greatest benefit? Capitalism does not give everyone in the capitalistic system the greatest benefit. In part because if you are not the one who is responsible for the means of production and you do not control the means of production, then where do you stand on capitalism? What part of the system are you? Well, it's not a system, it's an ideology. Very key distinction. But on the socialist ideology, it's very easy for everyone to find a place. They are gain from the means of production, but they are not responsible for the means of production. And I keep having to loop back to that because that is the most critical part to understanding how woke trash keeps getting made. Not just Santa Incorporated, but Captain Marvel in the MCU, the Eternals from the MCU, franchises that had a years long history of enjoyable movies that were all thrown away, a legacy of a cohesive storyline and treating source material with respect, all thrown away in chasing a disturbing and almost easily disproven ideology. And it's not, and there is a big, you have to step back and understand the sequence of events, the cycling of events. That it's not just one event taken in isolation. It's not just one show taken in isolation. I mean, I don't want to check my defeat badges and see what. Okay, yeah, I've already got Gear Smasher. Don't need to hang around and smash some gears. Alright, let's put the map back up. And Doozer's old enough. He may already have some of the badges before the zone swamp. So some of these may not register. Anyways, I'm trying to keep on track here. The vast majority of woke trash that is pumped out of current day movie studios, television studios, is being pumped out because the financiers who are pushing the content to be made don't care if it makes any money because they're not making money off of the product. Nobody was making money off of Santa Incorporated as a product. The money was coming from people who were already subscribed to a service for other content. The vast legions of pre-existing shows, pre-existing movies, are all being used. The content that has a sunk cost, it's already been paid for, is being used as a battering ram in order to fund the generation of new content whose only purpose is to push a political viewpoint or message in the most obnoxious way possible. Some might even make the argument that Santa Incorporated is so terrible because it's supposed to push people the other way. That instead of being a pro-toxic femininity message, is supposed to be an anti-toxic femininity message, and that everyone is supposed to hate it so much that the cause itself is torpedoed. I mean, that's a brilliant theory, but you're assigning a significant amount of intelligence to Seth Rogen and Sarah Silverman, intelligence that neither have demonstrated themselves to be capable of. Not to mention, neither has really demonstrated an ability to tell a joke or construct a cohesive plot. Kind of like I keep demonstrating that when playing a game and trying to talk, I get easily distracted. I'm sure there's a OC Remix song, StarCraft, Easily Amused, huh? You can start playing that in the back. I'd be like, cool, what's that? Alright, all the way down. Oh, there's a door down here. Did I miss it? No, I'm behind the pillar. Alright. So, this kind of just, and it was something I saw on the Critical Drinker, and he just asked out loud, how do these two keep getting jobs? They're not funny. I mean, why are they even being hired? They're not very good voice actors. They're not doing pitch or tonal modulation. They're not putting any emotion into the characters. You don't really believe. You're not drawn into believing that they are being the characters that they are voicing. And say what you will about Mark Hamill's political beliefs, or I would phrase it political. When it comes to Mark Hamill, let's just say that he is a fantastic voice actor who does a few voices very, very well, fits the profile of several characters very, very well. But he's someone who should probably stay within his wheelhouse of specific specific character acting. And yeah, that's kind of saying, yeah, Mark Hamill is very good at playing villains because his political ideology is at best villainous and at worst something that would make the Megamind in the first 5 minutes go, what are you smoking? If you don't get that, please go watch Megamind. It's brilliant. Okay. I think I've kind of I feel like I've just hammered on the. Did I just? I just fell through geometry. Where am I? Oh boy. 1 second. Because I'm going to have to do a loop command. Oh boy. Alright. Geometry hole. I need to write that down. And then I need to figure out how to get out of this geometry hole. Notes, 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 notes. I need a new note. Geometry hole at or around. Let's see if I can actually get on the hole itself. It's another distraction. Something else to focus on. Okay. The hole is right here. And we'll do a loc right there. Alright, we got our 2 locs for our geometry hole. And we'll throw that at the homecoming devs and see if we can't get that fixed. Alright. And the problem is when you're talking about TV shows and how they get made, there's just really not a whole lot to say. I think I spent more time than even a critical drinker did that doubling down on how did this, who paid for this, and why shows. You can tell the difference between shows that are generated for a political message. Another infamous one is the CW Batman, or well, Batman spinoff, Batwoman, Batgirl, whatever they're calling it, and a show with terrible ratings that somehow kept getting renewed and people recast and new characters brought in, and a props department that is completely clueless. A fight choreography department that, how can I, sometimes you have no gentle way to say something. But if you remember Sam Raimi's Hercules, The Legendary Journey, starring Kevin Sorbo, which also launched, what was it, Lucy Lawless as Xena, the warrior princess. If you go back and watch the first episodes of Hercules, The Legendary Journeys, the fight scenes are terrible. I mean, they're just absolutely atrocious. Punches clearly not connecting. There's a badly lit, badly shot face off between Kevin Sorbo's Hercules and a giant ogre, and from the lighting, you know that it's obvious that both were shot at separate times on separate screens with different lighting. It's just bad. But then as you got later on in the Hercules Legendary Journeys, and Aeolus joined in, and Xena came around, and you had Ares, God of War. I'm a lover, not a fighter. That line probably shouldn't joke about that line killing me, considering that the actor is actually dead. Very insensitive much, am I? Apparently, yes. Uh, but as you got deeper into Hercules the Legendary Journeys, the fight choreography improved a lot. I mean, it's by the time the show went off the air, Kevin Sorbo and his co-star were convincingly throwing punches with dozens of opponents, free-for-all battles, and they really were able to sell the idea that this is a full-blown fight. It doesn't look like they're dodging, weaving, not actually connecting. The lighting is much better when you have the special effects. There is a night and day difference. It's almost as big as the difference between Jack X Racing on the PlayStation 3 and, no, PlayStation 2, sorry. Jack X Racing on the PlayStation 2 and Jak and the launch, Jak and Daxter from the PlayStation 2's launch. It's night and day difference. Or is this even the same platform? Uh, the Batwoman, Batgirl, whatever CW show is such a step backwards. And I kind of have to focus on another CW show, Arrow, or Green Arrow, or whatever it was being called, the Arrowverse Initiator. The first Arrowverse shows were very, very good because Stephen Amell, as Arrow, was very, very convincing in the fight scenes. In, I think, the opening show, he does this running thing along the top of a warehouse, jumping and leaping, and it's looked like his face is set, his eyes are rolled back. He looks like he's become a completely different person as he's going into this fight mode. And it's, to use the pun, he looks like he's gone Super Saiyan. He's gone from this billionaire playboy to, oh crap, he's going to be the lethal killer. He's moving, the movement, the interaction, the whole cell of the acting is spectacular. So why then does Batwoman, Batgirl, or whatever, why do all of the fight scenes feel like they're first generation Hercules, Legendary Journey? This is your first fight choreographing ever, when the production team behind the Arrowverse shows had lots of experience designing, coordinating, pacing, blocking, figuring out the mechanical components of constructing a believable fight scene. How could they fail so badly? Well, who made money off of Batwoman, Batgirl? Serious question. Who made money? Why is... Oh, I somehow swapped bars. That's why it's not working like that. Whoops. Like, why did my teleport get so short? I need it for vertical movement. There's a badger on it. And the visible answer to everyone who watched the show is Batwoman, Batgirl, whatever, was not being produced to make money for the CW. It was not being produced to draw in advertisers. It was being produced to push the go woke political message. and the financial backers were willing to lose however much money they needed to lose to push that message. The message was the product, the show, the product, was not the product. That's how Batwoman got made, got renewed for a second season, and why so much time and effort was put into carrying its decaying corpse around the CW. And from my point of view as an outside analytical investigator, when it comes to shows like Batwoman, Batgirl, Santa Incorporated, there's a very strong case for criminal fraud to be put forward before a jury. And the reason why it would be described as criminal fraud is that theoretically in the broadcast TV industries, theoretically the market that CW services, or the CW services, CW produces a television show, or they broadcast a television show, and the business model is either the CW makes money off of merchandise from people who are buying something related to that show. You want a t-shirt with the Arrow logo, you want a t-shirt with pictures of the Arrow characters and character, uh, you want signed photographs, excuse me. If you want DVDs or Blu-rays of the show, you pay for them, and the show makes money that way. Well, the primary method by which most broadcast networks theoretically make money is they sell advertising space. The show is um, split into chunks, and in between various chunks of the show, an advertiser steps in and says, well, this show was brought to you by Lucky Strikes. This show was brought to you by Camel. This show was brought to you by KiwiCo. Oh, I'm sorry, KiwiCo. It's off the top of my head. But I think the point stands nonetheless. But what if it can be proven that an advertiser is paying money to the network and to the advertisers not on the production results of the show? And that is to say, an advertiser is not paying money because a show is successful, but they're paying money because a show is not successful. What if it could be demonstrated with court admissible evidence that advertisers were creating slush funds to be used to make propaganda films with no intent of ever having a return on investment? Now, what if some of those advertising companies are publicly traded who are not revealing to their investors, to their stockholders, to everyone who is involved on a financial side? What if they're not revealing to those financially invested people that the marketing money is being spent on political propaganda? Can anyone say failure to disclose? Can anyone say fiscal malfeasance? Because that's what it is. If you are a publicly traded company, say like Coca-Cola, and you're advertising on the CW's Batwoman because, or Batgirl, or whatever, and you're advertising there because it has a go woke political message, but you are not telling your investors, the people who actually own your publicly traded company, that you were spending marketing money to produce a political message, that you were engaging in political propaganda, you've actually breached several standing laws, not just in the US, but in the European Union, and in South Korea, and in Taiwan, and in Australia, and some other countries. You just can't go and spend money without having a detailed information of what that money is being spent on if you are a publicly owned company with public stock, and you must make financial statements to your stockholders who can buy into your stock at any time. they kind of have a right to know what you're spending your money on. They really do. And there's been numerous court cases in the past of stockholders who have demanded to see the books of a publicly traded company that they own investment in, and finding out that the money they thought was being spent somewhere wasn't being spent where they were told. Can we say Enron? Do I need to say Arthur Andersen? This is not theory. This is screwing up on a completely new plane of, yeah, haven't thought the financial ramifications through. If you want to fund political propaganda, it needs to come out of your personal bank account, out of money that you have been paid, and can't come from a company. It cannot be generated from a company that has a public interest. If you are a private company, no one publicly owns your stocks, you don't have to open your books to anyone but your regulatory tax agency to prove that you have paid the taxes on the money that you receive. Hey, that's a completely different story. But that's not who we're seeing advertising on Go Woke shows. We're seeing companies, publicly traded companies, who aren't informing their traders that they're funding political propaganda with no intent of ever seeing a return on the investment. That's the kind of thing that gets uh, investigators, legitimate financial investigators, raising their eyebrows and saying, hold on a second, we're going to need to see those books. And we're going to get discovery for every single phone that you've got. And we're going to get discovery for every single email that you send. And we're going to need your servers, hardware access. We're going to need the hard drives, including the ones you just threw in a dumpster. We're going to recover them. And that's the critical thing that I'm not sure that the producers of Santa Incorporated really understand what they're doing. They know what they want to do. They want to push a political message, and they want it to be seen as far as possible. But what they're not considering is that if you're pushing it on a subscription service, and you spend subscribers' money on something subscribers definitely don't want, based on previous financial cases that have gone to court, that have been decided by juries, that have been decided by judges, that have had lawsuits brought against them, that have had criminal charges brought against them, on a subscription access platform, if it can be determinably proved that Santa Incorporated was produced with no intent of ever receiving a profit, that it was intentionally produced as political propaganda, and that the executives who signed off on it knew that it had no chance at all of ever being a successful product. They were just making it to make a political statement, and they spent subscriber money on it, direct from the production accounts. That is going to put a world of hurt on the subscription television industry. It's going to put a world of hurt on things like Amazon Studios, which in itself has a couple of its own really big politically oriented stinkers. It's going to be the kind of generate the political backlash where average subscribers start demanding that they need to have a say in how their subscription finances are being spent, because they're not willingly paying for the studio to produce political messaging. And if an executive wants to do a political show or a political uh, advertisement, okay, fine. They just can't use studio funds and subscriber money to pay for it. It's got to come out of their own pocketbook. And that is not, it's going to have the long-term effect of Santa Incorporated. It's going to have a chilling effect on the subscription television market. There's going to be more people asking questions about how did this get green-lighted? How did this go? how did you get people actually into a recording studio? How did you get all the way from point A to point B? And nobody said, you know, guys, we're going to lose a lot of money on this. How did that happen? Because the people who were running the show didn't care about the loss of money. They practiced a socialist ideology. They controlled the means of their wealth generation, but they're not responsible for fallout when it fails. They already got their money. They already took it. And whoever they defraud, whoever they embezzle, whoever they steal from along the way, well, that's just doing business as normal as far as they're concerned. All that matters is the message is the product. I've been Aurian Archive, and if you've been hanging around for this 55 minutes of trying to make a political point while chasing badges around Paragon City, thank you. I do completely understand with YouTube's current algorithms and the improvements in voice recognition technology and closed captioning, transcribing, the chances that this video would ever be inserted as promotional content is excessively unlikely. And still, if you're looking for the occasional podcast, and at the very end, alright, so chaos theory. This kind of is a result of a joke. Where I've been doing a lot of offline videos recently for the City of Heroes closed beta testing. And there are some things, you know, that won't capture on video that, well, can't show them or shouldn't show them on live stream yet because, you know, like I just had that geometry bug a little while ago. If you show something that's broken and not quite working, that's not really putting the best image forward. There were quite a few people of the Aeon Strike Force who were a little perturbed that the broken version, incomplete, was the first available live version streamed. Now, the fact that they didn't throw any hissy fits over the stream when it was posted to their own feed and only howled when it got mass copied in with a whole bunch of other videos kind of raises questions as to, you know, if you're going to complain about the content, your time to complain was 5 days ago when it was first posted, not after it's already been up. Anyways, because of that, I kind of as a joke started titling some of those unlisted uploads as Chaos Theory to separate them from the Hybrid Theory live streams. And the more I kind of thought about it, for the chaotic ramblings, dealing with an unstructured, you know, I need to do something in a game or just kind of screwing around. It's not quite the right word, but when I'm when I'm doing something that like this, I'm going around and getting badges, so I'm just going to be spending a lot of time talking. It's like I like hybrid theory as relating to when I'm specifically doing something that is structured, breaking out the Impress files, bringing up specific websites, and having an idea and path of how something is going to be done. And so that's really where the chaos theory came from, is it went from an offline random streaming random walk to, you know, it's, I like it. It's on one hand, you know, having a couple different streams with titles that kind of inform viewers as to what they might expect out of them. I kind of really like that. But we are approaching 59 minutes. We are over 59 minutes, so I'm going to cut it here, even though I'm still badge hunting, so anyone who's looking at this later won't go, it's over an hour.